guys. My name is Andrew. Just like Jakeem said, I do the Activate thing over at Upland campus, which is, where my Upland people at? It's a little corner right here. So, no, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm so glad that Jakeem asked me to be here. I don't know. Like, for me, honestly, like, I love youth. I love, everything about them, but I think God has really placed, like, young adults in my heart. So, maybe sometime later down the road, I'll kind of be in that position. But for now, I just have the blessing of being here. And so just a little bit about myself. Just disclaimer is that I have like a slight cough. It's so annoying, right? All right, but another disclaimer, just because I'm Asian doesn't mean I got the coronavirus, all right? Let me just, I know that's wild, right? Oh my gosh, woo! Oh, I know. It's crazy that people are being racist about this. It's insane, man. But I don't know. I'm glad that you guys keeping up with the media, right? But I'm actually only half Asian, so people only get it half right, almost 100% of the time. I know some of you guys know me here, but the other half of me is actually Hispanic. I'm Mexican. So where all my Mexicans at over here? Yeah, okay, there you go. Yeah. I know. I don't look it. I don't. People are like, "Are you sure?" And I'm like, I don't know. I'm just like, don't worry, Mexican food is my favorite food. I don't know if that speaks for anything. I mean, my last name is Aguilar, so I don't know if that means anything. But a lot of people are like, well, a lot of Filipinos have Hispanic last names. You kind of look Filipino. I'm like, put some respect on my cultures, please. So I love both, but I kind of like to be interactive. I like that you guys are kind of laughing and talking with me. So what I like to do is I usually like to have you guys ask me some questions. So I'm going to let you guys ask me maybe like 2, 3, 4 questions and see how it goes, just so you guys can kind of get to know me a little bit. So I don't know if anyone wants to ask me one. No one? Wow, you guys. Okay, sure.
What's your favorite pastime?
My favorite pastime?
How many sneakers do you have?
Okay, I'm not like, right now I'm kind of in a problem where I keep buying shoes, but I don't know, like personal sneakers, I would say I would at least have like 20 to 25, which isn't a lot. I used to have like 50, but I mean, combined probably together with like the ones that I have, like as in like a stock, because I also like sell shoes and stuff to make some extra money on the side, but probably altogether I probably have like maybe 60, 75 shoes or something like that. But I don't know. Don't worry, I won't give you guys my address so you guys don't come steal my shoes. What's up?
What would be your superpower and why?
What would be my superpower and talk? Oh my gosh. Honestly, I would probably say teleportation. That's the most annoying thing. I think it's the most practical thing for me is just to teleport. Like, I don't know. It'd just be cool to be like, like sometimes I'm hanging out with Jakeem and I'm just, I wish I was in Hawaii and just boom. I'm just playing. I love Jakeem. Go ahead right here. What's my hobby? Except from buying sneakers. I love playing basketball. I used to skateboard a lot. Other than that, like it's honestly just been doing ministry, man. Like, and not to get all holy and like Christian on y'all, but like I've been getting pulled left and right, and it's like I thought I'd be tired, but it gives me more and more joy every time I do it. Yeah. All right, so yeah. Pequito, sí. Un poco, sí. It's a little bit. Like, it was actually, okay, fun fact, Spanish was actually my first language growing up because my Hispanic side always was taking care of me. But once I hit, like, 4th, 5th grade and was put into, like, I was in private school, and they stopped taking care of me because that was my daycare, kind of, So I kind of started to lose it as a kid. So it kind of is still there, but it'll come back one day, I hope. Yeah, I saw one more, yeah. What's my favorite sneaker? Honestly, like the ones I have on, I don't know if y'all can see it. They're like, it's just a pair of Jordan 1s. They're a very classic shoe. Came out in 1985. It was Michael Jordan's first signature shoe. It's just an all-time classic. So, yeah. All right, well, that's just a little bit about me. I hope you guys kind of got to know me just a little bit. And I feel like, we kind of made like this small little relationship together. At least, I mean, I want to get to know you guys too a lot more, but I can't ask all of you guys like 5 questions each. We'd be here probably till next week. So, but before we kind of move on, because there's a relationship that I want to talk about in the Bible, but before I do that, let me just pray for us. God, we just come before you. God, this is your service. This is your church. These are your people. And God, I just ask that we can come together to hear your word and that it be you and you alone that speak. I ask that in the service that you may receive all the glory, that you will receive more and more children into your kingdom. I pray that you will receive more and more people coming back to you. And I pray that you'll see more and more people just on fire and passionate for you. God, may you be here. May your presence be here. And may we give you the service. And so we pray this all in your name. Amen. Cool. So I want to talk to you guys a little bit about a specific character that I like a lot. If you guys were at winter camp with me, like you guys kind of hear it a little bit. Yeah, thank you guys. So I talked about this guy a little bit, but I want to focus on a different part of his life, a little different part of his story. And the person I'm talking about today is Moses. So I don't know if you guys like Moses, but I don't know. First I was like, no, my favorite person is King David, a man after God's own heart. Like that's honestly like, I feel like that's me. But I feel like I learned so much every time I read Exodus and I look through the life of Moses. And so today I want us to kind of go through the story of Moses' beginnings, of what he did. Because a lot of us probably think like the first thought that we have is that Moses is a biblical hero. He's an awesome guy. He split the Red Sea. He did all this amazing stuff. But a lot of us don't understand the journey that he had to go through because, you know, we come here, we hear sermons, and it's great, but the journey that he goes through is one of difficulty. It's one of a lot of heartbreak and sadness. It's a lot of trials and tribulations. It's a lot that he goes through. And so I wanted to highlight 4 main things in these 2 chapters. And so I'm sorry I don't have the TV like Jakeem, you know, but I will try and make an emphasis. If you guys want to take notes, I'll try and make an emphasis on like, hey, here's a note that you can take. So let me just get into this story. So this is after, you know, Moses was a baby and he grew up. He's over here with his new family. And so let me just read this to you guys. It's Exodus chapter 3. I'm going to be speaking from Exodus chapter 3 and 4. So it says, now Moses was keeping the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, and he led his flock to the west side of the wilderness. And as I read this, if you guys are following along, I might just skip over a little bit of the like non-essentials right now of what I want to. The whole Bible is essential. That's funny. I'm wearing a shirt that says essential, but no. Like, not trying to flex or anything, but, like, it was just funny I said that. But, yeah, and also I say, like, a lot of these weird, small little comments, just ignore me. My kids have learned to just laugh at me, but it's all, you guys could do the same. All right, so, anyways, let me try and read the story to you guys. And so Abraham's walking his flock, and an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush. He looked, and behold, the bush was burning, but it wasn't consumed. And Moses said, I will turn aside to see this great sight, why the bush isn't burned. And when the Lord saw that he turned aside to see, God called to him out of the bush, Moses, Moses, and he said, here I am. Then he said, don't come near. Take your sandals off your feet, for the place on which you are standing is holy ground. And he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at God. And then the Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt. I have heard their cry, I know their sufferings, and I have come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians and bring them to the land that is flowing with milk and honey, the promised land. And so he continues on, and he says, come. He calls Moses and he's like, come, I will send you to Pharaoh so that you can bring my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. And Moses says, who am I? God, who am I that I should take the whole nation out of Egypt? Who am I? Right? And he says, I will be with you, and this will be the sign that I have sent you, that when you have brought the people out of Egypt, you shall serve God on this mountain. And then Moses again says, if I come to the people of Israel and say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you, and they ask me, well, what's his name? And then God says, tell them, I am who I am. I don't know about y'all, but that's like a baller move, right? He's just like, all right, who sent you? It's like, it's not just, I am who I am. Like, my name is my name, right? It's a baller move. God is just saying, like, it's me. All right? And so God says to Moses, I am who I am. And he says, say this to your people of Israel, I am has sent me to you. God also said to Moses, say this to your people of Israel, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob has sent me to you. So I'm going to skip all the way down to chapter 4 now. There's a lot that he talks about. But so he's constantly saying, like, I'm going to take you to this promised land. I'm going to take you to this promised land. And in chapter 4 it says, and then Moses answered, but behold, they will not believe me or listen to me. They're not going to listen to my voice, for they say, the Lord didn't appear to you. And the Lord said, what is that in your hand? He said, a staff. And he said, throw it on the ground. So he threw it on the ground, and it became a serpent. And Moses ran away from it. I mean, I would run away from it too, right? But a staff turning into a snake, I'm out, right? I mean, he already saw a burning bush that didn't burn, so I don't know what's going on. And he said, put your hand out and catch it by the tail. So he put his hand out, caught it, and it became a staff in his hand, that he may believe that the Lord, the God of their fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob has appeared to you. And then he said again, put your hand inside your cloak. And so he puts it in his cloak, and when he takes it out, his hand was leprous like snow. And then God said, put your hand back inside. And when he put it back and took it back out, his hand was restored. It was made clean again. And he has one more. He says, if they still don't believe you after the second sign, then you shall take some water from the Nile and pour it on dry ground. And when you pour it, the water that you take from it will become blood on the dry ground. And then again, Moses just saw all these signs. He's like, but God, right? He says, God, I am not eloquent with my words. I don't know how to speak well. I stutter. I don't have a good speech of tongue. And then the Lord said to him, well, who's made your mouth? Who's the one calling you? Who's the one who created you, right? And he says, who makes him mute or deaf or seeing and blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now therefore go, and I will be your mouth and teach you what you shall speak. And then again, Moses is like, but, like, oh Lord, please send someone else. Just send someone else. This is too much. I can't do it. Just send someone else. And then he says, the anger of the Lord was kindled against Moses. I mean, I understand, God, why you're so angry at this guy. And so he says, is there not Aaron, your brother, the Levite? I know that he can speak well. Behold, he is coming out to meet you. And when he sees you, he will be glad in heart. You shall speak to him and put the words in his mouth, and I will be your mouth and with his mouth, and will teach you both what to do. So I'm kind of stopped there. So there's this whole story of Moses, and he gets this call from God. Like, he finally has this experience with God that is so amazing that he's just like, it's a crazy burning bush. I have to turn aside from what I'm doing to go see what it is. And then he starts having this conversation with God, and God's saying, hey, your new calling in your life is going to be to rescue my people from Israel and to take them to the promised land. That's your calling in your life. And he's saying, no, it ain't, right? He's like, no, God, I am, like, who am I, right? Who am I? And we're going to go through every single thing that Moses says but to, right? He's going to be like, but I can't do this, I can't do that. And so one of my first points that, if you guys want to write it down, is that in Exodus chapter 3, verse 11, I'll read it for you. It says, but Moses said to God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the children of Israel out of Egypt? Because he's saying, who am I? The first point is he doesn't want to follow God's call because of his past, right? He doesn't want to follow God's call because of his past. So let me tell you a little bit about Moses' past. Moses was a child, of course, like we all are. And he was actually put in a little basket and flown down the river because his parents were scared for his life. Like, he was in danger. They were going around killing people, so he was like, oh, I got to send my child. So Moses ends up growing up as like a foster kid. because he gets taken in by Pharaoh's family, which is cool, but I mean, like how Hebrews look versus like how Egyptians look, it's different. Just like how we have different races that we understand, like, oh, okay, like he's Mexican or she's like white or like whatever, like you can tell the difference. And so when you see somebody, when you see Moses growing up in his family, you can tell that there's some difference in there, that he just didn't fit in. So Moses was somebody who always struggled fitting in. So after having the struggle of fitting in, he would also see that, hey, I'm the same skin color and I look exactly like all my brothers who are servants here. And so he sees one of the slave masters like heckling one of his Hebrew brothers, and he gets so mad that he accidentally kills the guard. So Moses actually, one, he doesn't really understand his identity. Secondly, he's also a murderer. And then after that, he freaked out, tried to like cover some sand over him and just hope nobody saw. And then when somebody found out and Pharaoh was really mad, then he just booked it. Like he was scared. He was a coward. He didn't want to face up to it. He didn't want to, stand for, because a lot of these biblical heroes, they stand for what they mean, right? Like they're going to face like an army of 1,000,000 when they only have 1,000. Like that's what we read in the Bible. But Moses is like, no, I'm out, right? Flees to the countryside and stays there for a couple years. So he stays there for a couple years, and then after everything, because remember, he was in Pharaoh's house. He was technically like a child of Pharaoh, so he was living a life of luxury and had all like food that he can imagine and the jewels and whatever. And so he escapes to the countryside, meets somebody, Jethro, that is his father-in-law. He marries his daughter, and then he just becomes like just a shepherd. He just watches sheep. So he goes from like a kingly family to a family that just watches animals all day, right? So I would assume that Moses' self-esteem was actually really, really low. He probably didn't think much of himself. He probably didn't think he was really able to do much. He's probably really scared of everything that was going on in his life. Like he was just like, I'm just here to watch my sheep, that's it, right? And then all of a sudden God calls him, and he's so amazed by what God is doing, and so he turns aside and goes to him and finally receives, his calling. And so like I said, the first point is that he is so focused on his past that when God first calls him, he says, I can't. I don't think I can. And then so the second one that comes in is still chapter 3, verses 13 through 14. It says, and Moses said to God, if I come to the people of Israel and say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you, and they ask me, what is his name? What shall I say? And God said to Moses, I am who I am. And so this one's a really quick point, but Moses was afraid that even if he went, if he finally took the courage to go, that he would realize that he had no authority. So the second point I would say is that the second reason why Moses didn't follow God's calls is because he had fear of not having enough authority. Because who was Moses? He was just a shepherd boy. He was just a shepherd man, I guess, right? And so if he goes up to Pharaoh, hey, set my people free, he's like, who is this shepherd guy? And so he was scared that he didn't have any authority. But of course, as it says, like God's like, it's me. I'm the one sending you. And so if you want to make another point out of it, you could say God is our authority in that, right? That's what he was pretty much telling Moses, God is my authority. And so the next one, I'm going to go through these kind of quick, but Exodus chapter 4, verse 1, he says, and then Moses answered, because God is constantly like talking with him. He's constantly trying to like convince him, right? And so he's like, and then Moses said, behold, they will not believe me or listen to my voice, for they will say, the Lord did not appear to you. Right? And so the next thing I said is they're kind of tied together, but I believe the second one is credibility. Moses didn't follow God's call because he didn't feel credible enough. So there's a difference between like having the authority, like the power and the strength, versus being credible, being someone that has like at least some kind of, some kind of name to it, like not even like a powerful one, but one that actually just speaks truth, right? Because he killed someone, lied about it, ran away, so he's kind of like, maybe they don't believe me. Maybe people, like I'm kind of seen as a liar and a coward. And so the next one that I'm going to go through really quick is Exodus chapter 4, verse 10. And we're kind of moving along fast here. But Moses said to the Lord, "Oh, my Lord, I am not eloquent either in the past or since you have spoken to your servant, but I am slow of speech and of tongue." So the last thing, the point number 4 that he says is that the reason why he didn't follow God is because of his current insecurities. Right? He was insecure of the way that he taught. It wasn't anything about his past. It wasn't anything about, rising up to different tiers of leaders, but it was just about him. He was just like, I just can't speak well. And so it's interesting because I feel like we all kind of have like insecurities too, right? Like growing up, like I've been sharing my story in front of a lot of people lately, but it's a little vulnerable. But growing up, I not to get into all this again, but really quick, like my relationship with my dad was like garbage. It was bad. It was like, he was there, but just emotionally absent. I kind of even got to the point where I told him like, hey, you're not even, like, I don't even feel like you're my dad. Like I said it to his face. It was crazy. Crazy night. Did not end well for me, but it was a crazy night. But that's kind of like a quick sum up. But because of that relationship with my dad and him not being there emotionally, like I felt like I wasn't worth anyone's time. Like I felt like I wasn't worth the effort and the time for someone to show up to my basketball games or show up to, whatever events I'm doing, or even like understand that I was good at stuff. Like it was just assumed that I was just like a child and like I'm just a kid forever, right? And so for me, there's a lot of insecurities of like, I need people's attention. I need people's like, don't worry, that's not why I became a pastor. God called me to this, all right? Like honestly, like me knowing that I'm walking around back up here, it freaks me out. It's kind of weird. But I realized like I wanted people's attention so bad that I would kind of like that was my insecurity, and so I would kind of try and fill it with something else, right? And so I feel like all of these points are kind of what we all struggle with ourselves. And today I felt like I was really praying about it, and I was really struggling. I was like, God, what do you want me to talk about? Why? What do you want me to talk about? And I felt like he just wanted to talk to you guys about this, and talk about how there's 4 main reasons why we say no to God. There's 4 main reasons why we don't follow him. But actually the whole point of us not following, it's not just like, oh yeah, like if you follow these 4 rules, like you're gonna, walking with God isn't simple. It's not easy. It's kind of really weird, and we're trying to understand because we're sinful creatures and he's not, and so how do we really connect with him? And I think that one of the main things God was putting on my heart was just saying, I feel like there's some people here today, that just need to, they just kind of feel like my life with God is kind of boring. I don't know if that kind of hit deep with anybody, but I feel like there's some people that are just like, I just kind of feel stuck. I kind of feel like, there's no real fire in my, like, I don't know if you guys have ever dated somebody, and the first, they always say the first 6 months is your honeymoon period, and things are on fire, you're just like in love, and you're doing all that stuff. Like, if you have accepted Christ and you have had that experience, that's awesome. But then the hard part about relationships is how do you carry the fire over the years? Right? That's always the secret to marriages. What's your secret to keeping the flame? What's the secret to keeping the intimacy? And I feel like for a lot of us here, that might be the struggle that we're facing. Is how do we keep the fire? How do we keep the intimacy when I'm not up a mountain and I haven't been, at a winter camp, or maybe it's like you were just here at a service and it was awesome, but all of a sudden the services just seem the same. So how do I get this freshness from God? And I believe that it's because of these 4 things that we don't follow and obey God. And I'll get to the point of why following and obeying God is important. But for the first part, I want us just to focus on these things really quick and just touch on them. And so even the first one, it says God, it's focusing on the past. And I believe that we all have a past, right? We all have a life before Christ. Even if you were like, there's some people who are like, I was saved when I was 5 years old. I'm like, well, what did you do from years 1, 2, 3, and 4? No, I'm just kidding. I don't know. But even within our struggles, like even within our life with God, we've still made some bad decisions that we still shouldn't have made, and we kind of feel, and we maybe feel regretful. I mean, I hope you have a conviction to stay holy, but, actually something that I was actually here this morning preaching to some of the students at Christian school, and it was just one point that's actually sticking out to me, and it was saying, like, how do we take off our old self and how do we put on our new self? I was talking out of Ephesians 4, and I feel like that's kind of relevant. Like how, like a lot of us carry our past with us, not necessarily in a way that we can, because that past is talking about like sinfulness and like taking off your sinfulness. But I feel like a lot of us carry our past as like a nice little comfort blanket, right? A lot of us kind of wrap ourselves with our past, with the things that happened, and it's kind of hard to forgive people, maybe because people have hurt you, and so you kind of wrap yourself around that. And then, because I even have friends that have been hurt by a lot of people, and so they just push people away. And that's their security blanket because they don't want to deal with it anymore. Because the more people that they let in, the more chances they are to get hurt, right? So they're like, nope, security blanket, my past is my past. I've been hurt, so just leave me alone, right? And I believe that's not what God calls us to do. I mean, it's hard because that's why the church is here, because the church is supposed to be a community where we can let people be free and also understand that they are fully loved, even though that they are fully known. That's been a word that has been being preached in my sermons all day long, is that God fully knows you, but God also fully loves you. That means God knows everything in your past, everything that you're thinking, all the sinful things when the door is closed and nobody's looking. He knows the whole past, but he also loves you still completely. So this past that Moses is talking about, that's his security blanket right now. It's like, God, you want me to go to Pharaoh? Like, security blanket. I'm going to keep this on me, right? And then God's like, well, I'm going to go with you. So he's like, security blanket off. It's like, all right, let me think about the next thing, all right? And then it says, 13 through 14, Moses, if I come into the people of Israel and say, the God of your fathers sent me, and they ask me, what is his name? What shall I say to them? And he says, God is just pretty much saying, like, I am who I am. Like, I'm going with you. I'm your authority. I'm your power. I'm the one who is sending you, so why should you be afraid of anything? And I feel like even for us, sometimes we feel like the lack of authority as maybe for some of you guys might be newer Christians, or maybe some of you guys have been Christians for a long time, but you kind of went into slump, so you don't feel like you have authority in Christ anymore to go and do the things that God wants you to do. It's hard. I get it. I've been there. I understand what it's like to be in a life of sin while still proclaiming that I'm a Christian and feeling the need to come and talk with people and be there for people and try and, put on my Christian face when at home I'm struggling with whatever I'm struggling with. It's difficult to feel like you have authority when you're also walking in sin, right? I mean, Moses never said, God, forgive me for killing people. Like, he was still into sin. He still had the guilt. He still had everything that was going on. And so he's like, well, who am I going to say that's going to send me? He's like, I'm your authority. That's pretty much what God was saying, was, I'm your authority. And so the next thing that he talks about, chapter 4, verse 1, it says, Moses answered, but behold, they will not believe me or listen to my voice, for they will say, the Lord did not appear to you. And then the Lord said to him, what is in your hand? He starts showing him all this stuff. Moses was like, I don't have any, even if you go with me, I am not a credible person. I don't have, I'm not super buff. I'm not super strong. I'm not like a crazy warrior. I don't have an army with me. Like, I don't know what you want me to do. I'm scared. And he says, and God starts showing him these crazy things, right? He starts showing him staff and the snake. Oh my gosh. And then like puts his hand and it turns into like pretty much what leprosy is like a skin condition. Kind of probably just imagine a bunch of crazy warts on his hand and calluses. I don't know. It's disgusting, right? And puts it back in, comes back out. It's clean. And then, he's like, if you don't believe it, then pour water out of the Nile, turn to blood. Like, he's saying, I'm going to do all these things. I showed you in private. I'm showing you everything right now. And so you have my power with you. I'm going with you. It's still like an answer of authority, but also it's Moses is questioning just his own strength. He's like, I can't. Even though you go with me, I have nothing to offer. And God's like, I know you have nothing to offer, but I still want to use you. Oh, come on, somebody. That's a good one right there. All right. Thank you. Please. Because that's honestly what the main point is, right? Like, we have nothing to offer, but God still wants to use you. That's what it is. And that's the power of being a Christian, is that we have nothing to offer him, but he still wants to offer us everything. And so the next point is what I kind of talked about already. Verse 10, it says, "But Moses said, 'Oh, my Lord, I'm not eloquent, either in the past or since you have spoken to your servant, but I am slow of speech and of tongue.'" You know, that's kind of just saying, like, we all have things that we're kind of scared about. Serving God is interesting because you could serve God in a lot of ways. You really can, right? And so we have, let's see. Let me tell you guys a quick story because now I realize I have more time, which I'm happy about. But I'm not going to try and take all of your time. But I want to tell you guys a quick story. I was hesitant on sharing this or not, but I was called to be a pastor, I believe, at the age of like 18 or 19, right? And so I was all excited. I was ready to jump in. I was ready to, put me on stage, like I was a young kid, like high strung, thinking I got it all figured out, that I have eloquent words, I can move people towards God. But then yet I was still someone who was living in sin, right? I was still someone who was kind of struggling. And so I would take those opportunities and I would just go super strong, and I would fail and fail and fail. I would give bad message after bad message. I don't know, it was just, some of the things I would say is just like, oh my gosh, I hope I didn't hurt anybody, right? And so, but I started to realize that it's because I kind of focused too much on myself, right? Because like I said, I wanted attention. I wanted all this stuff. So I was like, I'm going to be a pastor. I'm going to be on stage. I'm going to get all this stuff. And so I kind of was struggling with this, and I wanted to share the story because even though I was failing and failing, there's one opportunity that God presented to me. There's one thing that God actually said to me. And so this is how the story goes, all right? So I pretty much had, I don't know why. I was dumb, all right? It was like the first Windows phone that ever came out, right? It was like 2013 or something. And so I sold my iPhone to buy this Windows phone. It's like, why would I'm so dumb. Oh my gosh. Okay, but God redeemed it, all right? He did a good thing with it. So I got this phone. I sold my iPhone. I got like $400 for it or something. It was still like in good condition, whatever. So I have $400 in my pocket. I'm driving up 30 minutes away from home because the girlfriend I was dating at the time, we're kind of like breaking up, and it was really like, it wasn't a good meetup. But right before I went in to go see her at her work, I pull up and there's this homeless man, which I thought was homeless, and he was like, hey bro, like, can I wash your windows, and maybe like you can tip me? And I was like, oh, like random, but and I was like, you know what, I feel generous today, like, and I just gave him a 20. I was like, don't worry about cleaning it, it's all good. And he's like, oh, thank you, man, like, I'm just trying to get the bus, like, to go see my family. I was like, all right, cool. And then he was like, yeah, I just need like $16 more. And I was like, all right, fine. Gave him another 20, right? I'm $40 out. This guy has a ride home. Awesome, right? But I'm focused on like I'm the one who wanted to kind of mend the relationship. She was the one who was trying to break it up. So I'm like thinking like, all right, let me just hurry up and go and like deal with this problem. And so I go and deal with the problem. And then of course, like, she just didn't want it. So we kind of broke up. It ended. So I was kind of like, I mean, I knew it was coming, so I wasn't like super heartbroken, but it's still kind of, breakups suck, right? And so I'm walking, and I get in my car, and I drive, and I'm in the parking lot, and I see the guy walking, and something in my heart just told me to stop. And so I was like, God, really? Now? And so I stop, I pull over, I talk with this guy, and I talk with him, and I start to realize that, it was a crazy conversation, because I was like, hey, bro, like, I don't know, are you doing okay? Like, I just want to make sure, like, follow up with you. Like, is everything cool? And he starts just telling me his stories, like, yeah, man, like, I just got out of jail. I got out of jail because I stabbed my uncle or my brother-in-law to death. And I was like, oh my gosh, I need to get back in my car. Like, oh, shoot. God, why did you want me to come see you soon? Right? But I was freaking out. And so the guy's like telling me the story, and he's just like, yeah, but like when I was in jail, like I met God. Like it was crazy. And he's just like, I met God, and it was so good. And I kept praying and praying, and he was like, but the only reason I got that angry to the point of killing him was because I found out that he was molesting my child. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, I don't know if I'm like trying to just say sorry. Like, sorry is definitely not enough. Like, it's just a crazy experience. And so he's telling me this, and then he's just like saying, like, yeah, and it's just a God thing. Like, I met God, and he was just telling me that, you know, just to keep praying about my trial, because he was sentenced to life. And so he kept petitioning and kept praying, and eventually they overlooked his case, and they switched from murder to battery. And so he was able to get out on parole. And so he was like, it was just a God thing. Like, I want to go see my kid. I want to go see my wife. Like, I'm trying to figure out how to get home. You gave me the money. Like, I'm so happy. And so I was like, do you need a ride? I don't know why I asked it. I was just like, God, do you need a ride? Is it better? Like, where are you going? And he's like, oh, I'm going this way. So I was like, all right, it's on my way home. And I was like, cool. So I'm driving with him, having this conversation. And I don't know, whenever I tell people, they're like, why would you let a murderer into your car? I don't know. God does crazy things, all right? And so I was talking with him, and then he was like, yeah, man, like, the one thing I want to do for my family is I just want to provide for them again. I want to feel like a man again. And he's like, my family loves, like, chicken dinners and like, Boston Market and stuff. And I was like, all right, looked up Boston Market. All right, it's on the way, like, let's go. I go there. I was kind of expecting him to use the $40 I gave him to pay for the food. But then, like, he kind of, like, looked at me, like, really quick, and I was like, it's all right. Like, I got it. I still got like $360 in my pocket. I'm like, fine, I got it. Paid like $40, whatever. Got him a chicken dinner to give to his family so he could feel like a man again, you know, trying to help him out. And so, honestly, like, I was not expecting to. I was trying to use that money for, I don't know, shoes or something, right? And so, I give him the chicken dinner. We're going home, and then all of a sudden we go to this motel because supposedly out of jail, like, he has a job lined up, doesn't start for 2 weeks at a steel mill or whatever, but they set up this, like, I don't know, this motel kind of situation so he can stay there and see his family. And so he goes in and he comes back out. He's like, I don't know what's going on. Like, I talk with people and they're saying, like, we're $200 short. Like, I can't stay here. And I was like, really? And so I pull out my money. I give him $200. It's a crazy story. I don't know why. I'm really in shock of that happening. But I gave him. He goes back inside. Everything's set. And I go, wait for him. Comes back. And I drive him around to go see where, you know, his family is. And so they're waiting outside for him, excited to see him. He brings in the food. And then we all get to stand in the parking lot. We get to pray together. Like, the little kid, you know, and the mom. It was awesome, right? So I drive away. I get his phone number, just, I don't know, for whatever reason. I drive away. Don't hear from him for 2 months. Never checked in on him, just kind of, it was the past. Like, I was dealing with a breakup, right? And so 2 months later, I get a text from a number that I don't really remember. And so I was like, he was like, hey, oh, well, just a little side note, because I told him my name's Andrew. And then he was like, and he started calling me Andrew, started calling me Drew for short. And by the end of the day, he started to call me Dre. And I was like, all right, I'll take it. All right? And so he was like, yo, Dre, like, I want you to come see me. Like, I want to, like, catch you up with what's been going on in my life. And so I go over, and he's kind of near the same place, but he kind of moved into, like, an apartment over there. And I was like, oh, this is pretty nice. He's like, yeah. He's like, honestly, like, everything that you did helped me so much, propel me so that I can afford places like this. Like, I have my own phone now. It's not, because he used to have, like, a little burner phone. Now he has, like, a smartphone. Now he's in an apartment. Now he's feeding his family, like, all the stuff. He's, like, taking care of his kids. And he's like, I want to pay you back. I want to give you the money back. And I was like, nah, man, you still need it. Like, you are still growing. You are, like, I have, because I'm living with my parents. I don't have a, you know, I was like, it's fine. You take it. And so after that, like, I mean, I haven't heard from him since. I lost his number. I switched phones. I got rid of that stupid Windows phone, got back to an iPhone, right? And so, but the moral of the story is not about what I did, because, like, I know it could seem that way, but I don't care about what I did. But the crazy thing that I want to think about is just that one small decision to obey God led to a crazy story that saved this man's financial situation with his family. And it's not because of me. It's really not. It's honestly, like, for me wanting a Windows phone to selling the phone that same day, to meeting the guy, having the cash in my pocket, him going there and God telling me to stop and go and talk with him, and all of a sudden just wanting to be like, okay, God, you want me to give him a ride? Okay. Oh, you want me to help him with this chicken dinner? Fine. If you want me to help him with this, it was just obedience after obedience. And I believe that a lot of the reason why our lives with God start to feel a little dull and a little like lifeless, and we kind of feel stuck sometimes, is because we don't listen and obey. I have this friend, his name is Chris, and he'll call me, it's kind of weird, like I'm not used to guys calling me like maybe every other day. I don't know, for me it's like just text me, like I don't know, like guys, it's just a relationship we have, I don't know. But he calls me almost every day, every other day. But it got to the point where it was really easy for me to kind of like see it and just kind of like put it on silent, put it face down, just do whatever I'm doing, right? Because I'll call him back, or like I'll talk to him the next day. It's fine, no big deal. He never like fusses about it. And so the first time I was kind of like, oh, like I feel bad, and so I screened it, but I was like, it's okay, like I'm kind of busy. But eventually it started getting really, really easy to screen his calls, because I was just like, man, I don't want to talk to you today. Like, I don't know whatever is going on, but it was really easy for me to kind of start screening his calls. And I believe that for a lot of us today, we got really, really comfortable screening God's calls. I believe that for a lot of us in here, it's really easy for God to call us to something, but it's easy for us to kind of be like, no, I don't really feel like picking this one up today. The reason why Moses' life was seen as a biblical hero is because he obeyed, he listened and obeyed, listened and obeyed. And I have like one more story that I want to tell you really quick. Is I was actually sitting with the CEOs of Yogurtland, and I was talking with them, and they're Christians, they're awesome people, and their lives are so simple. And so I was kind of sitting in with like the Q&A session, and it's a small group of us, and we're kind of just picking their brains, and we're like, what is your daily schedule like? For someone who owns, I forget, like 300 and something Yogurtland franchises, and there's probably more than that, I probably got the number wrong, but they're busy people. And he's saying, I wake up every day at 5 a.m., I spend 2 hours with God, and then I go to I get ready, eat, go to the office, and I come back at 5:30, and after that I turn everything off, spend time with my family. And his family is actually really cool. Like him and his wife and his daughter, they started having their own worship service every night at like 7 o'clock. And I was like, that's kind of weird. That would be kind of weird for some of us to worship with their families. But he's like, no, I do that every single day. And then I go to sleep, and I wake up again, and I do the same thing over and over again. And so it's him and his wife up there. They're always together. They're both a power couple. And somebody asked the question of, how do you keep your relationship with God alive and fresh when you do the same thing over and over again? And I already knew what she was going to say. And I was like, it's the simplest answer. But it was so profound when she said, I don't know why. And I hope that it speaks to you. Is she pretty much just looked and was just like, it's simple. Like, when you just listen and obey God, and you just listen and obey God, it never gets old. It's always something new. It's always something fresh. It's actually when you don't listen and when you don't obey, and God's saying the same thing over and over and over again, that it gets boring. It gets dull. You don't want to pick up the phone anymore. And I was like, that's so simple. But it's so true, and it's so good. And I believe that the one thing that Moses had to do at the very end of his call, after struggling and trying to work on everything with God and giving him every single excuse that he can give, the one thing that Moses had to do was make a decision to obey, listen, obey, and listen. Because God showed Moses like all of these crazy miracles, right, at the very tail end, and was like, hey, throw the snake out, and the staff turns into a snake, all this stuff. Like, it's crazy, but he did it all in private. And then he says, go to Pharaoh and tell him what's up. I would be terrified being like, okay, I saw God do this, but I don't know if he's going to do it in front of 10,000 people. Like, what if I just go up there and I just look like a fool? What if I go up there and nothing happens? What if I go up there, tell him to let my people go, nothing happens, and then he just kills me? Right? It's a difficult decision for Moses. But for all of us, obeying God takes a little step of faith. And I don't know where it is for you guys. We're going to kind of go into a prayer time and a worship time. I don't know where you guys are at in life. I don't know what your relationship with God is, but I feel like God wanted me here today to tell you that there is a refreshing in your life with God, but it's waiting on you. God has been calling you constantly and telling you to do things in your life, but you've kind of just said, sorry, I have too much in my past to deal with. I'm sorry, I don't have enough authority in my life to really go and tell someone about Christ. I don't really speak well. I don't really have I'm not cool enough. I don't appear this way that I can kind of influence people to come to church with me. Your story doesn't have to be like my story in helping out this homeless guy. Your story doesn't have to be something about like a crazy Christian revival story. Your story is simply just obeying God and having your walk with God being new and fresh. And I can tell you from my experience that every day walking with God is now a mandatory thing for me, because I realize that nothing in life matters except my walking with God relationship. Because once, I know what it's like to be dry. I do. It's hard. You don't want to be there. You don't want to do anything. You're just stuck going to church, hearing messages. It's kind of the same thing. As long as I go to church and, surround myself with the right people, I'm good to go. But I'm telling you, the Christian life gets boring when you do that over and over. You'll burn out. You need the freshness of God to be in your life. You need that secret to that marriage relationship with God, to keep the intimacy. And I believe tonight is going to be the night for you guys to take that next step of faith of being like, maybe for some of you it's going to be, God, what is my calling? What are you calling me to do? I just want to know. I just want to hear you pick up the phone. For some of us, it's, God, I know what you've called me to do, but I'm still too scared to do it. Help me do it. And I hope the things that we talked about through Moses' life can encourage you. And so if you guys would just stand with me. And if you guys would just close your eyes, and I just want to encourage you as the band comes and plays some songs and is doing that if that's you tonight, I pray that you can come to God and tell him exactly what's going on in your life. That you can stop screening his calls and you can pick up and finally have that conversation that you've been needing to have with him, the one that you've been avoiding. There might be, different reasons why you're scared, but I believe it's time to pick up your phone and call him back. I just encourage you, one thing I just want to encourage you right before we go into the time of prayer is, remember, it takes faith. It takes a small step of faith, but God is your authority. God is your credibility. God is the one that's going to push you through. It's nothing about you. Remember how I said God uses the broken people to fix the world. We're sinners. We fall. It's okay. The thing that's not okay is not getting back up and continue walking with God. So let's close our eyes. Let's pray. Pray whatever's on your heart. Pray whatever you need to pray. I believe God is going to speak to you. If you guys need help praying, we got people to our right, to our left. They'll help you pray. But let's just lift up our prayers to God right now.
This is where I'm meant to be. Me and you and me. And I don't have to prove a thing. You've already approved of me. And this is where I'm meant to be. Me and you and me. I don't have to prove a thing. You've already approved of me. And this is where I'm meant to be. I don't have to prove a thing. You've already approved of me. This is where I'm meant to be. Me and you and me. returning to the desire of your heart. Yes, we are. And we are returning. And we are returning. And we are returning.
Really quick before we wrap up our time tonight, I really do believe that this is the time where we may need to come get prayer. And as Andrew has shared the story of Moses tonight, the reality is a lot of us can see ourselves in Moses' story. That whether it's some past situations that have kept us from really pursuing God, whether it be insecurity, maybe not feeling good enough, there's been things in our life that has been obstacles or barriers from us really experiencing what God has for us, the call that God has for us. And I want to encourage you as his ultimate push is this, is that obedience, right? Faith and obedience gets us to a place where God can use us in some really, really amazing ways. But before we can get there, we got to deal with some stuff. So we won't be long. I do want to take a moment though, as they're going to continue worshiping. It's just going to be a few more moments. But we have people to my left and to my right that would love to pray for you. If that story is yours, and my past is keeping me, it's hindering, I can't deal with it. I know they say God has things for me, but when I look about my past or the hardship or the insecurities, the mistakes that I've made, the decisions that I've done, the people that I've hurt, that he can't be talking about me, he can't use me. I do believe that God wants to do some healing and restoration today. So, like I said, there's people to my left and my right that would just love to pray for you. I would encourage you to get out of your seats as we continue worshiping for a few more moments. Just allow us to pray for you. Jesus, God, we're so thankful. God, we thank you that you're a God who constantly pursues. You're a God who desires communion and fellowship with us. God, when I think about each and every one of our journeys, and I think about my life, and we look at Moses' life, God, the obstacles, the barriers, the mistakes, the insecurities, so many things could have been said. Man, look, I need to go to the next person, but it was, you stepped in, you continued to meet him face to face, and you used him. God, and I know that's what you want to do with each and every one of us. God, but I do pray for us, Lord, in our journey as we walk and as we deal with life, God, so many things seems to find themselves getting in the way. Lord, I just pray that your grace would continue to be sufficient. God, that in our weakness, in our failure, God, in our insignificance, it says that your strength is made perfect. God, that your grace would continue to be sufficient in our life. God, that I love the song that we're singing right now, Communion. Lord, I love that despite our flaws and our faults, it says that you died for us. It says that God, in the middle of our mess, gave his son to be a sacrifice for us, that before we were right, before we looked good, God, you died for us while we were at our very worst. God, in our sin and our mistakes, God, behind closed doors, when we saw things or we did things that we shouldn't have done, it says you loved us in spite of. God, I pray that we can continue to lean into that. God, and that would push us towards obedience in you. God, it would push us toward deeper faith in you. God, it would push us to a deeper journey in life in you. God, that you would have your way in our life. God, we yield. We yield all we are to you, God. So, Lord, we thank you and we love you that you constantly remind us of your grace and your love for us. In Jesus' name, we pray, and all God's people said, amen. Hey, guys, do me a favor. Give it up for Jesus.